So as you all know, 2023 was the absolute worst year for the Walt Disney Company, not just limited to the chain of box office failures in theaters, but also due to the fact that it so happened to have landed on their 100th anniversary, which really is something that Bob Iger took very personally because it really actually came across with a lot of other things, such as South Park Studios, Elon Musk, The Daily Wire, and among others, constantly calling out Disney for what they're really all about with their overall agenda and their shenanigans. And let's not forget about what looms for 2024. We all know that Elon Musk is going very hard on Disney and is going to continue to promote all of the Disney tapes that continue to really weigh in on the Disney agenda. We'll be talking more about that later on in the week. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You could also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So, one thing about the Walt Disney Company right now is that nearly every single division is going through various setbacks and challenges. Now look, yes, we know that Pixar had one success with Inside Out 2. You gotta give credit where credit is due. That movie made money, and it really didn't have much to do with an agenda at all. But this is something that we tend to see coming out of Disney. You always have an exception. You always have some kind of scenario where they kind of have one release that doesn't necessarily deal with their deliberate agenda. We already talked about this, about how this is a flat-out, laid-out strategy by Bob Iger and the Disney heads to have a one-off here and there that doesn't necessarily deal with an agenda to keep things afloat. Now, what's interesting about this has a lot to do with the current situation revolving around Snow White 2025, also known as the Snow White live-action remake, and the production disaster it's going through right now and how it recently got worse for actress Rachel Zegler. Let's discuss. Now, specifically, of course, on top of everything here, with all divisions at the Walt Disney Company going through various setbacks, due to Bob Iger's deliberate agenda, one major development now has more to do with the current issues happening with Snow White 2025, featuring Rachel Zegler, and how Disney's latest decision with this film is heading into more complications. One crucial update to this scenario now involves how recently Rachel Zegler has been reportedly creating unneeded drama through of course, heated arguments against director Mark Webb for not properly standing up for herself when the Disney heads recently decided to cut nearly all of Rachel Zegler's scenes, where she sings, and how the entire ending of the film was recently deleted and reshot, in a brand new way, of course, after multiple failed test screenings. However, one recent update that led Zegler to going into a full-fledged meltdown behind closed doors involved how Zegler recently learned by the Walt Disney Company that the film will no longer be close to 3 hours long in length. The initial plan by Bob Iger was to make this a near 3-hour Disney live-action movie, and that roughly 30 minutes worth of Zegler's scenes, including some action scenes, were completely axed. One of which specifically involved Snow White challenging the new prince, who goes under the name solely Jonathan, in a duel with wood training sticks, where she defeats Jonathan in a sparring session in front of a large castle. Now, it was best described as a very girl-bossy moment to test screeners that was lathered with cringeworthy dialogue that did not pertain to the actual scene and its direction. Now, this entire segment was recently deleted after screeners sounded off the alarm to Disney that this scene was nothing more than male-shaming. Zegler, however, felt it was one of her best scenes that she acted in and created argumentative conversations with Mark Webb, the director, for not fighting Disney hard enough to save the scene after 6 failed test screenings that put the film in full failure mode. Already, Disney is organizing a date for another test screening once the new version of the film is all edited together after the recent reshoots that took place that were done, most of which didn't involve Rachel Zegler. However, the ones that they are pushing currently right now, regardless of announcing that the film has wrapped, are from more reshoots during the month of August to reshoot many scenes during this second act for new songs by Rachel Zegler. The drama coming from Zegler was said to have been so extreme that Disney already wants to limit her press tour and her involvement in that for Snow White. And even the Disney executives have considered not allowing her to arrive for interviews at the world premiere based on her recent behavior. Now, let me just say one thing about this, guys, before I move on. Now, the thing about Zegler And we've talked about this, you know, multiple times already, is that she's right up there with actresses like Tatiana Maslany, Brie Larson, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, heck, even Amandla Stenberg, who recently joined the Insufferables, as I like to call them, a little pun on the Expendables there. But she really is a part of that group where she is so self-absorbed, she believes that everything caters to her, essentially, and that everything revolves around her status. Now, we already know that Snow White is doomed to fail, based on all of the money going into this thing, all of the funds that have been poured into Snow White. In fact, we already talked about the budget. It is already well over $300 million, if you put reshoots into the equation. A similar fate that has been going on with Captain America 4, where now the budget is well over $400 million, all because of the reshoots. So you're going to have two failures, most likely, in the beginning of 2025. We got Captain America 4, I believe it's still in February. Then following that, you got Snow White 2025. Not a good start for 2025 at all. Now, what's interesting about this is how Zegler has a very big problem with all the changes that are happening with the Snow White live-action remake and everything else happening around it. Now, to continue here, another scene that was axed as part of this major reset for the film involved how Zegler was furious over losing a scene that featured her singing with the evil queen before she knows that she is the villain, about taking down the quote-unquote patriarchy and the bandits in the Forbidden Zone of the Snow White story. So it's not a big shocker that they had a lot of moments in here, and they will continue to have moments in here, by the way, that use patriarchy in dialogue. You know, we've seen this, of course, done in a specific way with the Barbie film. Not a big shocker because, by the way, this movie was written by Greta Gerwig, the writer, the creator of the Barbie movie. Not a big surprise there as to why Disney would want to actually hire someone like that to take the helm of the Snow White film. Now, we already know that director Mark Webb was initially set to have a 3-movie deal with Disney for 2 Snow White sequels that got cancelled. We already talked about that. They wanted to create a full-on trilogy of movies, similar to what they're kind of trying to do with The Lion King. You got The Lion King 2019, you got the prequel coming out, Mufasa, and they still want to do a Lion King 2 based on the actual animated Lion King 2. So, to kind of make a 3-movie format there. But interestingly enough, yet again, we know that Snow White 2025 is not going to be good for anybody. It's not going to be good for Disney, it's not going to be good for Rachel Zegler's career, which is already dead in the water, as far as I'm concerned. And it's not also going to be good for theme park attendees. We already talked about how when Rachel Zegler said the things that she said about Snow White 1937, a lot of people, believe it or not, a lot of families boycotted Disney right from the get-go when they actually learned about her statements. So it's not going to be a good year at all if this really does, you know, flip and really just fails at the box office. So overall, guys, I would love to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.